What's up guys, my name is Ace, and this morning we got a hotfix in Warzone, and this actually changed a little bit of the weapon balancing, some of the optics have changed slightly, and there was also a change to the cargo trucks in solos. So in today's video, we're just going to be blasting through and covering every one of these changes in great detail, and I'm going to be showing you guys before and after wherever applicable. And let's kick it off with that cargo truck change in solo game modes. For those that don't know, the cargo trucks were the meta weapon for solo game modes, basically. And for anybody that plays solos, you already know this. One of the primary goals for, it seems like most people that really wanted to win at least, is to get a cargo truck and then essentially hide for the rest of the match. And then once you get to that last circle, it's just a big demolition derby of cargo trucks. And it basically comes down to the last cargo truck standing wins the game. So what they did with this is, instead of completely removing the cargo truck from solo game modes, they simply reduced the amount of cargo trucks that can spawn. Previously, it would spawn between 16 and 20 cargo trucks per game, and now it will only spawn 5 cargo trucks per game in solo game modes. And this, I feel, is a very reasonable change. It's fine that they didn't completely remove it because 5 cargo trucks in a match, that's not all that bad to deal with. It was never really a problem dealing with the odd cargo truck here or there in solo game modes. It was just the fact that by the time you get to the end game, you're dealing with like 3 or 4 cargo trucks in a row, and that should no longer be happening in solo modes. And this is excellent, and I would even say long overdue. They've definitely saved solo game modes with this change. But moving on, let's get into the weapon balancing, and the first weapon they changed here was the CR56 AMAX. This one caught another nerf, and this nerf was to the headshot damage multiplier. And let's have a look at it pre-patch here. If you were dealing with an enemy that had 3 armor plates and full health, it would require 3 headshots mixed in with upper torso shots in order for those headshots to make a difference and reduce the number of shots to kill. And keep in mind, that applied in its maximum damage range as well as its minimum damage range. But now, with this reduction to the headshot multiplier, it's going to require 4 headshots at any range mixed in with those upper torso shots in order to reduce the number of shots to kill. And honestly, I don't think this is going to severely impact the effectiveness of this gun. The chances that you'd be hitting 3 headshots combined with those upper torso shots pre-patch was already a fairly rare situation. So yeah, I don't feel like this is a severe nerf to the AMAX. I don't think this is going to destroy it by any means. It just makes it so those headshots aren't going to be helping you as much. And that will also apply if you're not hitting those upper torso shots. Maybe you mix some shots into the body. Now those headshots aren't going to be able to make up for that quite as effectively as beforehand. But overall, the AMAX is still going to be a very solid gun to be using. But after that, the Fara 83 had a few changes. The first thing is it got a slight recoil adjustment. And taking a look at it side by side here, basically what they did here is it looks like they reduced that horizontal recoil a little bit. So now this gun kicks much more straight vertically. It's still got a slight curve to the right, but it is less noticeable than before, so this is going to be a bit more accurate at range. But on top of this, they did slightly adjust its hipfire accuracy, and they made it a little bit worse when it comes to hipfire. Overall, though, I would consider this to be a net buff to the Fara 83. Next up, the AUG got a buff to its recoil as well, and it looks like what they did here is they essentially just reverted the recoil nerf that they gave this about a month and a half ago or so. And now it basically just recenters between bursts again on its own, so it doesn't walk itself up as you continue firing multiple bursts. But the recoil within each burst appears to be pretty much the same here. So yeah, this will once again allow you to spam that AUG at the maximum fire rate, while still keeping a pretty tight grouping. Next up, a bunch of the Cold War optics were changed with this little hotfix. The first optic that was changed was the Tundra's default scope, and basically what they did here is they just reduced that fisheye effect with the optic. Everything else looks basically the same, but you can see on the left pre-patch, if you look at the trees on the bottom left of the scope, you can see how they're slightly distorted and there's a bit of a curve to them. That no longer applies, it's much more of a flat image now. This isn't a massively noticeable change or anything, but just a slight improvement to the Tundra default scope. After that, we got changes to the 3X, the 4X, and the SUSET multi-zoom optics. And with these, essentially what they did is they just moved your eye further away from the scope, so it no longer takes up quite as much of your screen. And what this translates to is less visual bounce and recoil with that optic, because when you're further away, it's going to appear to move less. And it was pretty much the same change across the board for these optics. And just taking a look at the 3X comparison pre-patch versus post-patch, because that's what I just happened to have footage of, you can see this was a massive change to the 3X optic. And for most of the guns in the game, I consider this to be a buff because, like I said, there's less visual bounce with that scope. It's going to be easier to keep track of targets in your sights, and this is more along the lines of the VLK 3X from Modern Warfare guns. However, there is also one downside to this, or at least I consider it to be a downside, and this is that it also applies to the sniper rifles. Pre-patch, you can see here using the Swiss with the 3x optic, this would give us the same zoom level as the Kar 98 with the sniper scope on it. And the great thing about this is you have no glint when using a 3x optic on a sniper rifle. So that was one of the huge benefits to using a Swiss over a Kar 98, but now when we have a look at the 3x sight on the Swiss, you can see that it is significantly zoomed out, and you no longer get that same sort of view that you would get compared to the Kar 98. And while you still don't have glint while aiming down sight with the 3x, it's just not going to be nearly as effective for sniping specifically. But for all the full auto guns and everything, like I said, this is great news. Now, I did want to take this a step further when it comes to these optics, since they said that they just reworked them. I also wanted to do a quick recoil test using the Fara 83 with these 3 different optics, and as you can see here, the 3x optic is improving your recoil a little bit. It does reduce the magnitude, although in doing that, it kind of squishes it down, and that results in slightly more horizontal recoil, or at least more of an experienced horizontal recoil. But then with the 4X and the SUSAT, these both seem to have little to no effect on your recoil whatsoever. It's just the 3X sight, but it does appear that the 3X helps with recoil. But finally, we have one last adjustment that was made, and this was to the LMGs with the new standard suppressor. If you guys remember, I made a video on this where, with this new version of the suppressor for Cold War guns, it now improves your aim down sight time and your sprint out time. However, when I did the testing with the LMGs, in every test that I did, it either had no effect on your aim down sight time at all, or in several cases, it was actually harming your aim down sight time instead of helping it, only by about 1 frame, but still, in multiple tests, it was hurting the aim down sight time. Now, in the patch notes, Raven said that this wasn't happening before, but like I said, I did multiple tests with this, and I was getting consistent results. In either case, they did make a bit of an adjustment to this so that the aim down sight speed is increased from 2% up to 3.5% while using this suppressor, which in my testing post-patch, that has at least eliminated the situations where I was getting a slower aim down sight time while using the sound suppressor. However, I still wasn't seeing a measurable improvement at 60 FPS at least. So this is still a negligible improvement to your aim down sight speed on LMGs. And it's a similar story with the sprint to fire speed. I couldn't measure any difference here whatsoever. But like I said, at least there's no situation where this is slowing down your aim down sight time. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for this quick hotfix that we got this morning. Overall, I think these are some excellent changes. I'm really happy to see that change to the cargo trucks and solo modes. I think that's definitely going to save that mode, and I may be interested in checking it out again now. And then for the full auto guns at least, I'm loving those changes to the 3X, 4X, and SUSAT multi-zoom optics. And I definitely see myself making some adjustments to a few of my more long-range AR setups because those optics are just much better than they used to be. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what did you guys think about these changes that they made with today's hotfix? Are you generally happy with them or unhappy with any of them? Just let me know those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.